We'll move on, Christy, to ASPI. Of course, we saw this report, The Australian had it today from the Strategic Policy Institute, warning that the ADF is in serious trouble. They said it will become a paper ADF because essentially the government has been too focused on AUKUS and saying, look, we're all good here because we've got big picture ideas in the offing. But it doesn't really help us in the meantime. I mean, if we ran into trouble, we don't have the resources right now. And of course, Albanese was none too happy about this. You can understand why, because he's been called out. Here he was this morning.
Well, that's what they do, isn't it, ASPI? I mean, seriously, they need to, I think, have a look at themselves as well and the way that they conduct themselves in debates. We've had a defence strategic review. We've got considerable additional investment going into defence.
I think the PM woke up a bit groggy this morning. He sounds like he smoked a packet of 25 there, but leaving that aside, Christy, the point is that we have had more than a decade, and it's not just the Labor Party's fault. The previous government is at fault as well. We've had more than a decade of poor defence policy, and I think it's only gotten worse under this government. We are in the worst position we've ever been, basically, when it comes to the ADF and defence. And the Prime Minister just bats it away and says, well, of course ASPI would say that.
Well, it's sort of, played the man, not the ball, right? And who knows if he had been properly briefed on ASPI's report before he made those comments, or that was a line that politicians sometimes try and weave into things and try and respond with when they're not across the detail of the brief. And sure, defence policy and defence expenditure policy, and defence is a policy expenditure area that goes out sort of 25, 30 years, and it's really complex and it's really detailed. And he may not be an expert in it. He may not be competent or confident to mount an argument on camera against ASPI, who are experts, who are people drawn from military battle, from long-time defence intelligence, from defence industry, and from the Defence Department themselves. I mean, they are Australia's preeminent expert group of defence analysts, and I don't think it's probably right to mount a response to Australians wanting to know what his opinion was to their allegations or their criticisms of Australia's defence policy, saying, well, they need to take a look at themselves and how they engage in public debate. If I was wanting to learn about defence, or I know whose side I'd be on in terms of listening to around defence policy. But their report, the cost of defence, they make an argument that Australia has never been less prepared for the threats that we face, and that we've never had more threats to face. And I think they may be right, And what else do we know about defence? We know defence departments, even though there's not a change of minister, defence departments like to run the government. It's a tail wagging the dog, so to speak. And so it's a new government, and defence is certainly using ASPI to assess their message. And I mean, I don't think they're wrong, Caleb. And I don't think there's a defence expert in Australia who thinks they are wrong.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the government not that long ago was trying to cut money out of ASPI, and probably for good reason, Garth, because they are calling them out and telling them exactly how things are. But I mean, it's not the only example we saw of that today. Of course, Sharry was talking about before, Paul Keating's ropeable about the capital gains tax, the unrealised capital gains tax. So they won't take any notice of the bloke, who designed superannuation, what he thinks. They won't take any notice of the experts on defence. They seem really cocky at the moment, Garth, and with good reason, because they had a good win at the election. But Albanese would want to be very careful, because governing is not going to get any easier from here. And if you get too cocky, he will slip up.
Well, look, that may well be the case. It certainly can't be the basis for our plan for the next several years. We've got to be able to form ourselves, be able to hold them to account very, very quickly. But look, I think there's some points that we can make here that show that this government can spend money. It can increase its defence spending if it wants to. And I'll give you a really quick comparison that shocked me when I went through this process. We spend about $56 billion a year on defence. On NDIS, we spend 48. By the year 2035, we're hoping we can get our defence spending up to 100 billion a year, but NDIS by that stage will be 125 billion. If this government wanted to spend money on this, if it wanted to engage people and get moving, it could. The truth is, I don't think it really focuses on defence. I don't think it wants to solve this problem. I don't think this is an area where the government's going to slip up. I think this is an area where the government's going to walk away and leave a great big void, which is, as you pointed out, in the current environment, the absolute worst situation that Australia could be facing.
Well, as long as China still thinks he's a handsome boy, he'll probably think he's doing all right.